Billionaire goes to visit his heiress daughter and can't believe what he sees. Arthur Harrison never imagined he would one day be standing in front of a cracked mud house, holding a bouquet of imported flowers that cost more than most people earn in a month. His only daughter, Clara, heiress to a financial empire valued in the billions, had disappeared 3 years ago without any explanation. It was when he finally found out where she was that the real shock began. Clara had chosen to live in that forgotten place in rural Appalachia, in a farming community where electricity only came on for a few hours a day. Arthur's imported car looked like an alien object on that dirt road. He had driven all the way from New York City himself, refusing his personal driver, because he wanted to keep this meeting completely secret. The press could never find out that the heiress to Harrison Life Sciences was living in conditions many would consider miserable. When Clara appeared at the door, Arthur felt his heart tighten. At 25, she still had the beauty she'd inherited from her mother, but her bare feet and simple patched dress clashed brutally with the expensive jewelry he'd brought as a gift in the car trunk. "Dad?" she said with a genuine smile he hadn't seen in years. "Clara." Arthur could barely get the words out. "What are you doing here?" "I live here," she answered, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "What do you mean you live here?" His voice came out harsher than he intended. "You disappeared for 3 years. Your credit cards were cancelled for lack of use. Your apartments are empty." Clara invited him inside the simple house. The interior was even more shocking: rough wooden furniture, clay pots, a single bed with patched sheets. There was no air conditioning, just an old fan that made a constant noise. "Where are your things, your clothes, the gifts I gave you?" "The gifts Arthur looked around, incredulous. "I donated everything," Clara said calmly, pouring water into a simple glass, "including the inheritance I received when I turned 18. Arthur felt his legs go weak. "You donated $4 million? To the families around here. They needed it more than I did." The silence that followed was broken only by the noise of the fan. Arthur tried to process that information. $4 million, an amount he had carefully set aside to guarantee her financial independence, simply given to strangers. "Have you lost your mind?" he exploded. "Do you know how long it took me to build that fortune? How many sleepless nights? How many sacrifices? And how many important moments of my life did you miss because of that obsession?" Clara shot back, but without aggression. "When was the last time we actually talked, Dad?" Arthur opened his mouth to answer, but couldn't. He couldn't remember a single meaningful conversation with his daughter in recent years. It was always about business, about preparing her to take over the company, about responsibilities. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like, and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. A knock on the door interrupted the tense moment. An elderly woman, around 70 years old, walked in without ceremony. "Claire, my dear, you need to come quick," the woman said, out of breath. "Martha's little grandson is sick, running a high fever, and the community clinic is closed." Clara immediately set down the glass and grabbed an improvised bag that was sitting in the corner of the house. "Mrs. Gable, I'm on my way. This is my father," she introduced him quickly. "Dad, I have to go. A child is sick." "But we were talking," Arthur protested. "The conversation can wait." "The child's life can't," Clara replied, already heading out of the house. Arthur was left alone, trying to understand what had happened. His daughter, who had always been raised with every comfort, had abandoned everything to live in that place, and even cared for strangers as if they were family. He decided to follow them to the house where the child was. The path was short but revealing. The simple homes, most of them wattle and daub, were arranged around a small square where a modest school stood. What caught his attention was the name painted on the front of the building: Margaret Harrison Memorial School. Margaret was the name of his late wife, Clara's mother. Confused, Arthur approached the school. An older man sweeping the yard greeted him. "You're Claire's father, aren't you? We can tell by your refined manner. She takes after you in bearing." "What do you mean?" Arthur asked. "Claire built this school with her own money. Said it was in honor of her mother. She worked on the construction herself, carrying bricks, mixing mortar. That girl has the Midas touch." Arthur felt a lump in his throat. "She worked on the construction?" Of course, she wouldn't hire some big company, said she wanted every brick laid with love. The local masons helped, but she was always right there learning, sweating right alongside everyone. The man went on sharing details of the construction, while Arthur observed the simple but well-kept school. There was a vegetable garden out back, playground equipment made from old tires, and colourful murals painted on the walls. "How many children study here?" he asked. "About 50. Before, they had to walk 5 miles to the neighbouring town. Many of them didn't go to school because of the distance. Now they're all getting an education." Arthur walked through the schoolyard, taking in the details. There were small signs indicating who had donated each item. Desk donated by Clara Harrison. Books donated by Clara Harrison. Playground equipment donated by Clara Harrison. She had used her real name, hadn't tried to hide her identity. "You have a special daughter," said the janitor. "She didn't just give the money, she gave herself along with it. She's here every day, teaching the children, caring for the sick, helping the families." "Caring for the sick," Arthur repeated. "She studied nursing, didn't you know? She took the course over in the neighbouring town. She uses her maiden name so she doesn't draw attention, but we all know who she is. Claire is our nurse, our teacher, our friend." The shock was even greater. Clara had studied nursing in secret. Arthur had always planned for her to take over as president of Harrison Life Sciences, continuing his business legacy. He had never imagined she had other dreams. When he returned to the house where Clara was tending to the sick child, he found a small crowd waiting for news. The people recognized him immediately. "You're the father of our Claire," said an excited older woman. "What pride you must feel for that girl." "She saved my husband when he had a heart attack," another woman recounted. "She did chest compressions on him until the ambulance arrived. The doctors said she saved his life. And when the flood destroyed our homes, she's the one who organized the rebuilding," a man added. "She didn't rest until she found a place for everyone to stay." Arthur listened to the accounts with growing astonishment. His daughter, whom he had considered irresponsible and rebellious, was seen by these people as a hero. Clara finally came out of the house looking tired but relieved. "The fever's gone down. It was an infection that responded well to the antibiotics," she announced, met with applause and thanks. "Where did you get the medicine?" Arthur asked. "I keep a small supply for emergencies. The community clinic in town often runs out of basic medications." "And where does the money come from to keep that stock going?" "I work. I pick up shifts at the clinic in the neighboring town twice a week. The pay isn't much, but it covers the basics." Arthur stayed silent on the way back to Clara's house. She worked as a nurse to fund her charity efforts. The heiress to a financial empire earned minimum wage so she could help people in need. "Why didn't you tell me you were studying nursing?" he asked when they were alone again. "Because you wouldn't have allowed it. You already had my whole life planned out. Business administration, a graduate degree abroad, taking over as president of the company at 30. And was I wrong? You were prepared to be a business leader, not to—" he gestured, searching for words. "To be happy?" Clara finished. "Dad, I never wanted to be a businesswoman. Since I was a child, I dreamed of helping people, of taking care of those in need. But every time I tried to talk about it, you changed the subject or said it was teenage nonsense." Arthur vaguely remembered a few attempts at conversation Clara had tried to start over the years. He had indeed dismissed them as phases or romantic ideas she'd outgrow once she matured. You could help people in other ways. With the family money, you could build hospitals, found non-profits. Helping from a distance, right? Signing checks and showing up at charity events? Clara shook her head. "Dad, that's not how it works. People need to know that someone genuinely cares about them. They need to feel like they're not alone. And you need to live like a—" He stopped, realizing he was about to say something offensive. "Like a poor person," Clara finished. "Dad, I'm not poor. I have everything I need. I have a home, food on the table, a job that gives me purpose, real friends, the chance to make a difference in people's actual lives. What more could I want? Comfort, security, a guaranteed future." "Security?" Clara laughed without humor. "Dad, have you noticed how you live? You have 3 bodyguards. You live in a house that looks like a fortress. You don't trust anyone. You work 16 hours a day. And you take sleeping pills. Is that security?" The observation struck Arthur right in the chest. It was true. He lived like a prisoner of his own wealth, always suspicious, always worried about threats, always working. "I built all of this for you," he muttered. "I know, Dad, and I'm grateful. But I chose to build something different for myself." They were interrupted again by a knock at the door. This time it was a young man in his mid-20s carrying a bag of medicine. "Claire, I got the antibiotics you asked for," he said, kissing her cheek naturally. Arthur watched the gesture carefully. There was intimacy there, genuine affection. "Dad, this is Silas, my fiancé," Clara introduced. "Silas, this is my father." The young man extended his hand with a polite smile. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Harrison. Claire talks about you a lot." "Fiancé?" Arthur repeated, ignoring the extended hand. "When did you two get engaged?" 6 months ago, Clara answered. "We're getting married next month at the church here in the community." "And you weren't going to tell me?" "I sent an invitation to your office. Your secretary said you were too busy to read personal correspondence." Arthur vaguely remembered his secretary mentioning invitations that arrived occasionally. He always asked her to decline them all, assuming they were unnecessary social events. "How did you two meet?" he asked Silas, trying to maintain his composure. "I'm a teacher at the school Clara built," Silas answered simply. "We met on the first day of class. She was painting the front of the building when I showed up for work." "A teacher?" Arthur repeated, as if the word left a bitter taste in his mouth. "And what's your career plan?" "My plan is to keep teaching the children around here. I'm finishing a specialization in rural education through the state university. I also help Claire with medical care at the community clinic." "And how do you intend to support a family on a teacher's salary?" Silas and Clara exchanged glances. "Dad, we don't need much," Clara explained. "We have a house, food we grow in our garden, work that gives us satisfaction. What else would we need? Children cost money, education, health care, clothes. The children around here grow up happy and healthy with far less than you imagine," Silas said politely but firmly. "And when we have children, they'll grow up in a community where everyone helps each other, where they'll learn solid values." Arthur felt a wave of irritation. This man, who probably earned less in a year than Arthur spent in a week, was talking about solid values, as if Arthur didn't have any. "Clara, I need to talk to you alone," he said. Silas took the hint. "I'll go check on the child you treated today." He kissed Clara again and left. "Do you intend to throw your life away for this teacher?" Arthur exploded once they were alone. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm building a real life." "A real life?" "Clara, you're the heiress to one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the country. You could marry anyone, have anything." "I don't want just anyone. I want Silas." "Why? What does he have that other men don't?" Clara paused to think for a moment. "He listens to me, Dad. Really listens. When I talk, he stops what he's doing and hears me. He remembers the things I tell him. He cares about what I think, what I feel. When I'm sad, he notices and asks what happened. When I'm excited, he's happy right along with me." Each word was like a knife to Arthur's heart. He tried to remember the last time he had truly listened to Clara, cared about her feelings, noticed when she was sad. "Besides," Clara continued, "he shares the same passion I have for helping people. When a child learns to read at his school, he's as happy as if it were his own child. When an unemployed father finds a job, he celebrates with the family. Silas sees people, Dad. He doesn't see numbers, statistics, or business opportunities. And I do? When was the last time you remembered the name of the doorman at your building, or asked your housekeeper how her family is doing, or thanked your chauffeur for anything besides driving well?" Arthur fell silent. He couldn't answer because he didn't know those people's names. They were just functions in his life. "I don't want to live like that, Dad," Clara said more softly. "I don't want to be a person who only sees his own navel. I don't only see my own navel, I create jobs, I pay taxes. You do that because it's required to keep the business running, not because you care about people. The accusation stung because there was truth in it. Arthur had always seen his employees as human resources, not as people with dreams, problems and feelings. Silas came back a few hours later, while they were having dinner. The meal was served on clay plates, simple but well-seasoned food that Clara had prepared. "How's the child?" she asked. "Much better. The mother sent her thanks again. I also talked to the folks at the school about the wedding celebration. Everyone wants to help with something." "What wedding celebration?" Arthur asked. "It's a tradition here in the community," Silas explained. "When someone gets married, everyone pitches in. Some make the food, others handle the decorations, the music. It's everyone's celebration." "And where will the ceremony be?" "At the church here in town," Clara answered. "It's small, but there's room for everyone we want there." Arthur tried to imagine his daughter getting married in a country church, with decorations made by neighbors, home-cooked food. It was very different from the wedding he had always imagined for her. A luxurious ballroom, hundreds of important guests, a designer gown. "And the honeymoon?" he asked. "We're going to spend a week at the beach in the Outer Banks," Silas said. "It's close by and Claire has never seen the ocean." "Never seen the ocean?" Arthur was taken aback. He had taken Clara abroad several times, always on business trips where she stayed at the hotel while he worked. But he had never taken her on a simple leisure trip, just so she could see beautiful places in her own country. "Silas promised me we'd wake up early to watch the sunrise on the beach," Clara smiled. "And that we'd walk along the sand holding hands." Arthur noticed the sparkle in his daughter's eyes. It was genuine happiness, unlike the polite composure she showed at corporate events. It was the first time in years he had seen her truly happy. After dinner, Silas politely said goodbye and left. Arthur was alone with Clara for the first time since he'd arrived. "How much does he know about our financial situation?" Arthur asked. "He knows you have money. He doesn't know exactly how much, but he knows it's a lot. And that doesn't spark his interest?" "Dad, if it did, do you think he'd stay here with me living like this? If Silas wanted money, he'd convince me to go back to New York City, not to stay in a simple cabin." The argument made sense, but Arthur was still suspicious. In his experience, everyone had a price. "I'm going to test him," he announced. "What kind of test?" "I'm going to make him an offer. If he really loves you, he'll refuse." "Dad, don't do this." "Please? Why not? If he's as principled as you say, there's no problem at all." Clara sighed, realizing she couldn't dissuade her father. The next day, Arthur woke up early and went to find Silas at the school. He found him cleaning the desks before class started. "Can I talk to you?" Arthur said. "Of course, Mr. Harrison, come in." They sat at small children's desks, which created an almost comical situation. Two grown men squeezed into child-sized furniture. "Silas, I'll be direct. I don't want you to marry my daughter." Silas looked at him with surprise but remained calm. "May I ask why?" "You don't belong together. She was raised with privileges you can't offer. Over time, she'll grow tired of this simple life and become unhappy." "Did you ask her if she's unhappy?" "She's still in a romantic phase. Reality will hit when she wants to have children, when she wants to give them comfort." "Mr. Harrison, with all due respect, I think you're projecting your own values onto Clara. She seems very happy here." Arthur took a deep breath and played his trump card. "How much do you want to walk away from her life?" Silas blinked a few times, processing the question. "What do you mean? How much money do you want to end the relationship and never contact my daughter again?" The silence that followed was long. Silas looked at Arthur as if trying to figure out whether the question was real. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. Name a price. 100,000? 200,000? 400,000? Silas stood up from the desk and walked to the window overlooking the schoolyard, where some children were already playing before class. "You really think I'd sell my love for Claire?" "Everyone has a price. It's just a matter of finding the right one." "No, sir, not everyone has a price, and I'm not merchandise to be bought or sold." 1 million, Arthur insisted. Silas turned to face him. "You could offer all the money in the world and I wouldn't accept." Claire is not an object you can negotiate over. She's a person who chose to be with me, just as I chose to be with her. 10 million. That's enough for you to start a new life, far from here, in comfort. That's enough. Silas exploded for the first time. You're insulting me and your own daughter. Do you think our love is a lie? That I'm with her out of self-interest? The children in the yard stopped playing, startled by the shout. Silas noticed and lowered his voice. Mr. Harrison, I respect you because you're the father of the woman I love, but I won't let you put a price on my character. If you can't believe that someone can love your daughter for who she is, not what she has, the problem isn't with me or with her. The problem is with you. You don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly. You think money solves everything, that everything can be bought. But there are things in this world that have no price, and my love for Claire is one of them. Silas headed for the door of the classroom. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a lesson to teach, and you have a conversation to have with your daughter, because I'm going to tell her everything. Arthur was left alone in the classroom, surrounded by children's drawings pinned to the walls, posters with the alphabet and multiplication tables. It was a simple environment, but there was love there. It was visible in the care with which everything was organized, in the colorful decorations made with cheap materials but with creativity. He tried to imagine Silas working there every day, teaching underprivileged children, earning very little, but making a point of giving his best. It was a world completely different from his, where everything revolved around profits and results. When he returned to Clara's house, she already knew everything. Silas had told her during his break between classes. "Dad, how could you?" She was visibly disappointed. "I wanted to be sure that he really loves you." "You want to be sure? Then look at this." Clara pulled a shoebox from under the bed. Inside were dozens of handwritten letters. "Silas writes me a letter every week since we met. He tells me what happened at school, how the students are doing, the plans we have for the community. He writes about his dreams, about how he imagines our future together." She picked one of the letters at random. "This one he wrote when I was sick with dengue fever. He took care of me for a whole week, cooking, doing laundry, giving me my medicine on time, and he wrote about how worried he was, about how he couldn't imagine life without me." Clara picked up another letter. "In this one, he tells me about the day one of his students managed to read an entire book by herself for the first time. He talks about how he wanted to share that joy with me, because he knew I'd be happy right along with him." Arthur looked at the handwritten letters. It was clear they had been written with care, without rush, with attention to every word. "When was the last time you wrote a letter to someone, Dad? When was the last time you stopped to think about someone else's feelings?" The question echoed in the silence. Arthur couldn't remember when he had done anything spontaneously romantic. His communication had always been through emails, objective text messages, secretaries mediating his contacts. "I just wanted to protect you," he murmured. "Protect me from what? From being happy? From finding someone who truly loves me? Protect you from being deceived. In the business world, I learned that people always have ulterior motives. Dad, not everyone lives in your world. There are genuine people, capable of true love, of sincere friendship, of generosity without expecting anything in return." Clara put the letters back in the box. "Silas met me when I was covered in paint, sweaty, wearing old clothes. He didn't know who my father was, how much money I had or didn't have. He fell in love with me, with the person I am. And if he ever finds out the truth about our fortune, won't it change his behavior? He already knows, Dad. I told him everything in the second month of our relationship. I told him about you, about the company, about the inheritance I gave away. You know what his reaction was?" Arthur shook his head. He said he was relieved, that now he understood why I had knowledge that didn't match my apparent financial situation, and he thanked me for trusting him. That's it? That's it. He didn't ask for anything, didn't suggest we change our lives, didn't show any greed. He was just happy that I shared my story with him. Arthur sat down heavily on a rough wooden chair. His worldview was being challenged with every conversation. In the corporate universe where he lived, information about wealth always changed people's behavior. Opportunists, gold diggers, and fake friends always showed up. Maybe he's just really good at hiding his intentions, Arthur tried to argue, but without conviction. Dad, I know how to spot falseness. I lived 22 years in your world, remember? I learned to identify flattery, disguised self-interest, bought friendships. Silas has none of that. He's genuine. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. How do you support yourselves? Arthur asked, changing the subject. I already told you I work as a nurse twice a week in town. Silas teaches classes here and also does some extra work. He helps families with paperwork, teaches adults to read, organizes farming cooperatives. And that's enough to live on? To live the way we chose to live, yes. We don't have a high electric bill because we use solar power that Silas installed. We don't have a water bill because we have an artesian well. We grow most of our food in the garden. I buy clothes at the mall in town or get them from people who don't use them anymore. Arthur tried to calculate how much a month of living like that would cost, probably less than he spent on one dinner at an expensive restaurant. And are you happy like this? Very happy. I wake up every day excited to work. I have time to talk to people, to enjoy the sunset, to read a book. I don't live stressed out. I don't take sleeping pills. I'm not afraid of being robbed or kidnapped. But what about the future? What if you get old and sick? Dad, do you think your fortune will protect you from old age and sickness? Money buys treatment, but it doesn't buy health. It buys caregivers, but it doesn't buy affection. It buys an expensive hospital bed, but it doesn't buy peace of mind. At least it guarantees dignity. Dignity doesn't come from money, Dad. It comes from the respect we build with our lives. The people here respect me because they know they can count on me. Silas is respected because he's a dedicated, honest teacher who cares about every student. And me? Do people respect me? Clara hesitated before answering. People respect your power, your money, your position. But you, as a person, I couldn't say. The answer was harsh, but honest. Arthur tried to remember someone who truly cared about him as a person, not as a successful businessman. He couldn't think of a single name. Your friends, your employees, do they like you or your position? I don't know, he admitted. When was the last time someone reached out to you just to see how you were doing, without wanting anything in return? Arthur thought hard, but he couldn't remember a situation like that. Dad, you built a fortress around your life. But fortresses are meant to keep enemies out, and they also keep friends out. The rest of the afternoon passed in awkward silence. Arthur watched Clara preparing home remedies for some neighbors who stopped by to pick them up. She knew each person by name, knew about each family's health problems, asked about their children, parents, work. When the sun began to set, Silas came back from school. He greeted Arthur politely, but the tension from the morning still hung in the air. Claire, can I talk to you? Silas asked. They went out to talk in the backyard. Arthur could hear parts of the conversation through the open window. I don't want this to cause problems between you two. My father is the one who needs to learn. Maybe we should postpone the wedding. No, we're not changing our plans because of... Arthur felt a tightness in his chest. His presence was causing conflict between the couple. His attempt to protect his daughter was hurting her. When they came back inside, Clara looked sad. Dad, I think it's better if you leave, she said. You're making everyone uncomfortable. I just want what's best for you. Then accept my choice. Accept that I know what's best for me. How can I accept you throwing away every opportunity I created for you? What opportunities, Dad? The opportunity to live in a gilded bubble with no contact with reality. The opportunity to marry someone from our social class who maybe doesn't even truly love me. The opportunity to take over a company that doesn't interest me. You could create your own business, use your resources to start something. To do what? Selling unnecessary products to people who already have everything? Exploiting employees to generate maximum profit? Avoiding taxes through legal loopholes? Is that what you call opportunity? Clara's words were like swords piercing Arthur's convictions. She was questioning not just his specific decisions, but his entire philosophy of life. "I built an empire for you to inherit. And I don't want to inherit an empire, Dad. I want to build a life that makes sense to me. Doing charity, making a difference, healing people, educating children, strengthening communities. To you it might just be charity. To me it's purpose." Silas approached. "Mr. Harrison, may I suggest something?" "Go ahead." "Why don't you stay here for a few days? Get to know our community better, see how we live. Maybe you'll understand Claire's choice better." "Stay here." Arthur looked around the simple house. "There's an inn in the neighboring town," Clara explained. "It's not luxurious, but it's clean and comfortable." "That's not necessary." "Yes, it is," Silas insisted. "If you really want to understand your daughter, you need to know the world she chose to live in." Arthur hesitated. His schedule in New York City was packed. He had important meetings, urgent business decisions. "Can't your business wait a week?" Clara asked. He thought about the answer and realized that, in fact, his business could always wait. He had created an artificial need to always be available, always working, but the company ran fine even when he traveled. "All right," he agreed. "I'll stay a few days." Clara smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. "Thank you, Dad." The next morning, Arthur settled into the inn in the neighboring town. The room was simple but clean, with working air conditioning and a full bathroom. It wasn't the luxury he was used to, but it was adequate. Clara picked him up for breakfast at her house. On the way, they passed by the school where Silas was already working with the children. "Want to go in?" she asked. "I don't want to disturb." "You won't disturb. The kids love meeting new people." They walked into the classroom. Silas was teaching math to children between 7 and 10 years old, using pebbles and sticks to explain addition and subtraction. "Children, this is Mr. Arthur, Claire's father." Silas introduced him. "Good morning, Mr. Arthur," the children shouted in unison. A little girl raised her hand. "Are you as rich as Miss Claire used to be?" Clara and Silas laughed at the blunt question. Arthur didn't know how to answer. "Was Miss Claire rich?" he asked, feigning surprise. "She sure was," said a boy. "She had a lot of money, but she gave it all to the families around here. She's just like Robin Hood, except better because she didn't steal from anybody." "And why did she do that?" Arthur asked, curious to hear the children's perspective. "Because she has a good heart," said a girl. "My mum says some folks, the more money they have, the more selfish they get, but Miss Claire is the opposite." "What do you mean, the opposite?" "She got more generous when she had money. Then she figured, if I have plenty and other people have nothing, I share." The simplicity of the explanation touched Arthur. An 8-year-old child had understood his daughter's motives better than he had. "And do you think she did the right thing?" he asked. "Of course," they answered in unison. "Why?" "Because now we've got a school," said a boy. "And when we get sick, there's medicine," added a girl. "And when there's a party, everybody has fun together." Another one finished. Silas resumed the lesson and Arthur left with Clara. "They truly see you as a heroine," he remarked. "They see me as someone who cares about them. That's different." To them, it's the same thing. They walked through the community. Arthur noticed that despite the simplicity, there was organization. The houses were modest but well kept. There was a small central square, community gardens, and a makeshift soccer field. "How does the administration work around here?" he asked. "We have monthly meetings where everyone takes part in the decisions. If there's a water problem, we discuss solutions. If a child has no school supplies, we organize a drive. It's a real democracy. And when there are conflicts, we talk until we reach an agreement. Sometimes it takes a while, but we always find a solution that works for everyone." Arthur tried to imagine resolving business disputes through conversation until everyone was satisfied. It seemed impossible. In the corporate world, someone always ended up losing. And what if someone doesn't want to cooperate? That rarely happens. When everyone takes part in the decisions, everyone feels responsible for the results. They stopped at a house where an elderly woman was sitting on the porch. "Mrs. Martha, how are you doing?" Clara asked. Better, dear. My grandson is doing much better after the medicine you gave us. This is my father, Mrs. Martha. The woman stood up to greet Arthur. So nice to meet Claire's father. You must be very proud of that girl. I am, Arthur replied and realized it was true. She's an angel in our lives. When her husband arrives, he'll be lucky to marry a woman like that. Her husband? Teacher Silas. They're getting married next month. We're all so excited. It's been a while since there's been a wedding around here. Do you know Silas well? I've known him since he was a little boy. He was raised right here. His father was a carpenter. His mother did sewing for folks. A humble but honest family. Silas was always the most studious of the bunch. He got a scholarship to go to university, but he never forgot where he came from. Why did he come back here after graduating? Because this is his home, and because he knew the children here needed a good teacher. He could have stayed in the city, making more money, but he chose to come back and help the community. Arthur grew thoughtful. Silas had chosen less money for more purpose, exactly like Clara. Mrs. Martha, can I ask you a personal question? Arthur said. Of course, dear. Are you happy here? The question seemed to catch the elderly woman by surprise. Yes, I am. Why wouldn't I be? Don't you miss more comfort, more resources? Look, son, I've lived in the big city before. I worked as a housekeeper in New York City for 15 years. I made good money. I was on the books, and I lived in my boss's house with air conditioning and a big TV. And why did you come back? Because there I was, nobody. I was just another maid. Nobody knew my name. Nobody cared about me as a person. Here, everybody knows me. Everybody cares when I get sick. Everybody invites me to their parties. Here, I have value. But financially I have enough. There isn't much left over, but nothing essential is missing. And what I can't buy, the neighbors help me with. When I need to see a doctor, someone takes me. When I'm sick, someone cooks for me. When I'm sad, someone comes by to talk. She paused. That's priceless, son. In the city, I had money, but I didn't have anyone who truly cared about me. That conversation moved Arthur deeply. He was beginning to understand that there were different kinds of wealth. Claire and Silas are going to be very happy here, Martha went on. They were made for each other, and made for this place. How can you be so sure? Do you see how they look at each other, how they care about each other, how they work together to help everyone? That's real love. And what if they had the chance to live with more comfort? If they wanted that, they would have left already, don't you think? Claire had money and chose to stay. Silas had the opportunity to work in the city and chose to come back. When two people make hard choices to stay together, it's because their love is strong. Arthur and Clara continued their walk. He was processing everything he had heard. Dad, can I ask you something? Clara said. Sure. Are you happy? The question was simple, but Arthur couldn't answer right away. I have success. I have accomplishments. That's not what I asked. I asked if you're happy. He thought about his daily routine, waking up at 5 in the morning, checking emails before coffee, meetings all day long, eating dinner alone while working on his laptop, going to bed late, worried about company problems. I don't think much about happiness, he admitted. I think about objectives, goals, results. And when you reach a goal, are you happy? I feel satisfied, but soon there's another goal to reach. So you're never truly satisfied? It's a constant pursuit of growth, or a constant escape from dissatisfaction. Clara's observation made him stop walking. What do you mean? Dad, have you ever stopped to think about why you always need more? More money, more companies, more success? Is it because you really want those things, or because you're afraid of what will be left if you stop chasing them? Arthur had never thought about it that way. His pursuit of success had always seemed natural, inevitable. And if you stopped working tomorrow? Clara asked. What would you do with your free time? He tried to imagine it and realized he didn't know. He had no hobbies, no close friends, no interests beyond work. I don't know, he admitted. Doesn't that scare you? A little, he confessed. Dad, you built a life where you only have value when you're producing. But you're a person, not a machine. You deserve to have moments of rest, of pleasure, of contemplation. They arrived back at Clara's house. Silas had already returned from school and was preparing lunch. "How was your morning?" he asked, without any hard feelings over the previous day's argument. "Educational," Arthur answered honestly. During lunch, Arthur observed the dynamic between Silas and Clara. They talked about simple things, how the school day had been, which patients Clara had treated, their plans for the weekend, but there was genuine attention in their questions and answers. "Silas, can I ask you a question?" Arthur said. "Of course." "Why did you choose to be a teacher? With your potential, you could have pursued a more lucrative career." "What is potential?" Silas asked back. "Intelligence, education, capacity for hard work. And you think those qualities are only good for making money? Not only for that, but they're wasted in professions that pay little. Mr. Harrison, can I tell you a story?" Arthur nodded. "When I was in college, I interned at a multinational company in New York City. I made more in 3 months of interning than my father made in a year as a carpenter. On the last day, my boss offered me a job. And you turned it down?" "I did. You know why? Because in those 3 months, I didn't do anything that really mattered. I created presentations to sell products people didn't need. I helped the company pay less taxes through legal loopholes. I sat in meetings where we discussed how to lay off employees to boost profits." Silas paused. "At the end of the day, I went home feeling empty. I was making money, but I wasn't making any difference in the world. And as a teacher, you make a difference? Every day. Yesterday, a student who was struggling with math finally understood division. I saw the sparkle in her eyes when it clicked. That girl is going to use math for the rest of her life. But that doesn't pay the bills." "It does. My bills are simple, remember? And at the end of the month, besides having enough money to live on, I have the certainty that I used my time for something that truly matters. And what if you have children? Your responsibilities will grow." "That's true," Clara agreed. "But our children will grow up watching their parents work with purpose, helping other people, being useful to the community. What a life lesson that is." "In my opinion," Silas added, "it's more valuable to teach children to be good people than to give them every possible material comfort. Don't you think you're being too idealistic?" "Dad, what is idealism?" Clara asked. "Wanting to live according to our values? Choosing love over money? Prioritizing relationships over career? It's not practical. And is the practical life the way you live it satisfying?" Arthur fell silent. Again, Clara had asked a question he couldn't easily answer. After lunch, Silas went back to school, and Clara went to see some patients. Arthur was left alone in the house, looking at the simple objects around him. There were nursing books, a few novels, notebooks where Clara jotted down home remedy recipes. On the wall, photos of the community. Not professional pictures, but spontaneous snapshots of parties, work crews, children playing. He picked up one of the notebooks and leafed through it. Clara had written down details about every family, who had diabetes, who suffered from high blood pressure, which children needed special attention at school. She knew the life of every person in the community. Arthur tried to remember if he knew any personal details about his closest employees. He knew his secretary was married, but he couldn't remember her husband's name or whether they had children. He knew his driver had kids, but he didn't know how many or how old they were. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his secretary. "Mr. Harrison, you need to return urgently. We have a crisis with the Japanese shareholders." "What kind of crisis?" "They're questioning some of the company's practices. They want an extraordinary meeting tomorrow." "Which practices?" "Related to working conditions in the factories. It looks like an internal report was leaked." Arthur felt his stomach tighten. He knew exactly which report had leaked. A survey showing precarious safety conditions in some facilities, which he had decided to ignore so as not to compromise quarterly profits. "Sir, are you there?" "I'm here. Tell the Japanese we'll have a meeting on Friday. I need a few days to prepare our defense." "But, sir, they insisted on tomorrow." "Friday," Arthur repeated firmly, "and cancel all my appointments until then." "Sir, that's unprecedented. You've never cancelled a whole week of meetings." "Well, now I have. Is that a problem?" "No, sir. I'll take care of everything." Arthur hung up the phone and sat thoughtful. For the first time in years, he had chosen something personal over business. And strangely, he didn't feel guilty. When Clara came back, he told her about the call. Trouble at the company? Some. Nothing that can't wait a few days. You're changing, Dad, she observed with a soft smile. What do you mean? The father I knew would never postpone a crisis meeting to stay here with me. It was true. The Arthur of a week ago would have left immediately for New York City, cancelling any personal plans. Maybe I'm starting to rethink some priorities. And how does that make you feel? Scared, he admitted, but also relieved. That night, Arthur went to dinner at Silas's house, who lived with his parents in a slightly bigger house, but just as simple. Silas's father, Hank, was a man of about 60, a retired carpenter due to back problems. Pleasure to meet Claire's father, Hank said, shaking Arthur's hand. That girl is a blessing in our lives. Silas's mother, Mabel, had prepared a hearty dinner with simple ingredients: rice, beans, free-range chicken, a garden salad, cornbread. Everything served with love on mismatched but clean plates. How did you two meet? Mabel asked Arthur. I'm Clara's father. No, I mean you and your wife. How did you meet? Arthur felt a knot in his chest. Margaret had passed away 5 years ago, a victim of cancer. We met at a graduation party, he said. She was finishing psychology, I was finishing business administration. She was the prettiest one at the party. And what else caught your attention about her? Mabel insisted, with genuine curiosity. Arthur paused to think. It had been years since he'd talked about Margaret with anyone. She laughed a lot. She had a contagious laugh, and she genuinely cared about people. At the party, while I was trying to make professional connections, she was talking to everyone, waiters, the photographer, the decorator. To her, every person was important. And did she like you right away? No. Arthur smiled, remembering. She said I was too serious and that I needed to learn to relax. And did you? Hank asked. For a while, yes. Margaret taught me to pay attention to the small things in life. She loved having breakfast in bed on Sundays, walking in the park, watching movies cuddled up on the couch. How lovely, Mabel exclaimed. And after Claire was born? Margaret became even happier. She always wanted to be a mother. She took such loving care of Clara. She sang her to sleep, made up games, read her stories. Arthur realized he was getting emotional. It had been years since he'd talked about these memories. And you? What were you like as a father when Claire was little? Silas asked. Arthur hesitated. I worked a lot, even on weekends. Margaret always complained that I missed important moments. Like what? Mabel asked, without judgment, just curious. Clara's first steps, I was in a meeting. Her first words, I was traveling for work. Her first day of school. I had an important presentation. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, but reflective. Do you regret it? Hank asked. Every day, Arthur admitted. Especially after Margaret died. She always said I was missing our daughter's childhood. I thought I was working to give Claire the best future, but the truth is, I was missing her present. And Claire? How did she deal with losing her mother? Mabel asked. Very badly. She became withdrawn and sad. I didn't know how to help. I tried giving her more gifts, more freedom, more money. But she only got more distant. Maybe she needed you, not the things you gave her, Silas suggested gently. Probably, but I didn't know how to be emotionally present. All I knew was how to work. And was that when she decided to leave home? Hank asked. She started drifting away gradually. After college, we barely talked anymore, until one day she simply disappeared. She left a note saying she needed to find her own way. Were you angry? I was desperate. I hired private investigators to find her. I thought about using my connections to force her to come back. But deep down I knew I'd lost the right to control her. Mabel got up and brought out a homemade papaya dessert. Mr. Harrison, may I offer an opinion? Please. You're here now. That's what matters. It's never too late to rebuild a relationship with your child. Do you think I still have a chance to win back her trust? Claire has a good heart, Silas said. She wants you in her life, but on her own terms, you know, respecting the choices she made. And what if I can't accept those choices? Then you'll lose her again, Hank said simply, and this time it might be for good. The conversation continued late into the night. Arthur told them more about Margaret, about the early years of the company's success, about how hard it was to balance work and family. Silas's parents shared stories about how they raised their son, about the challenges of living with little money, but plenty of love. "Did you two ever want more?" Arthur asked. "Of course we did," Hank admitted. "When Silas was little, I dreamed of giving him everything I didn't have. Nice clothes, expensive toys, trips." "And why didn't you try to get rich?" "We did try. I even took on some extra jobs that kept me away from home for weeks at a time. The money was better, but I realized I was missing my son growing up." "And then?" "Then I decided I'd rather be a present father with less money than an absent father with more." "And did you ever regret it?" "Never," Mabel replied. "Silas grew up knowing he was loved, that he could count on us. Today he's a good, honest man who cares about others. No amount of money can buy that." "And what if he'd had more opportunities with more money?" "What opportunities?" Hank asked. "He went to a public school, but he was one of the best students. He earned a college scholarship on his own merit. He graduated with honors. The opportunities were there for anyone who worked hard. But he could have gone to a private school." "And would that have made him a better person?" Mabel asked. "He learned to get along with people from different social classes, to value what he has, to work hard for his goals. Isn't that an education?" Arthur grew thoughtful. Silas really did seem to have received a solid education, focused on values and character. "You two are extraordinary parents," he said sincerely. "No, we're not," Hank laughed. "We're parents who tried to do the best they could with what they had." "And that's what all parents should do," Mabel added. "Give love, attention, and a good example. The rest is just extra." When Arthur returned to the inn that night, he stayed awake for a long time thinking about the conversation. Silas's parents had something he never had with Clara: genuine presence, attention to their child's emotional needs, quality time. The next day, Arthur went to watch Silas teach. The children were learning about the environment, and Silas had organized a hike through the nearby woods to show different types of plants and animals. "Mr. Arthur, would you like to come with us?" Silas asked. "I don't want to get in the way." "You won't be in the way. The children will enjoy having another adult along." Arthur joined the group. Silas explained about each plant, the importance of preserving nature, how animals depend on trees to survive. The children asked questions constantly, and he answered them patiently. "Teacher, why do some people cut down trees?" a boy asked. "Sometimes out of necessity, Toby, to build houses, make furniture, but sometimes out of greed, to sell the wood and make quick money. And is that wrong? What do you all think?" Silas turned the question back on them. "It's wrong," a girl answered. "The birds end up without a home." "And we're left without air to breathe," another boy added. "Very good. So how can we use the wood we need without destroying nature?" The children suggested several ideas: planting new trees, using only the wood that was necessary, finding other materials. Silas took the opportunity to talk about sustainable development in simple terms the children could understand. Arthur watched, fascinated. Silas was teaching complex concepts through practical examples and participatory discussions. The children weren't just memorizing information, they were learning to think critically. "How did you learn to teach like that?" Arthur asked during the break. "By observing the children," Silas answered. "They learn best when they can touch, see, and experience things, and when they feel their opinions are valued." "Didn't you have specific training?" "I did in college, but what taught me the most was working directly with them. Each child learns in a different way. My job is to figure out the best way for each one." "And isn't that tiring, adapting your teaching for each child individually?" "It's hard work, but not tiring, it's rewarding. When you see a child who was struggling finally understand a concept, you get all your energy back." Arthur thought about the employees at his company. He had always expected everyone to work the same way, following the same methods, producing the same results. He had never considered that each person could have different potentials that could be developed in different ways. Silas, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Do you plan to have children with Clara? We do, yes. Why do you ask? Have you thought about how you'll raise them? What kind of education you'll give them? Of course we have. We want to raise children who are good people, who care about others, who have solid values. And formal education? School? College? Our children will study, obviously. But we'll make sure their education isn't just academic. We want them to learn about empathy, solidarity, honesty. And what if they want to pursue careers, different ones, more lucrative ones? They'll have total freedom to choose their own path. We just hope to have taught them values that help them make ethical choices, regardless of the profession they choose. And what if they choose to be businessmen like me? There's no problem with that. Being a businessman isn't wrong. The problem is how you do it. You can do business while respecting employees, taking care of the environment and contributing positively to society. The answer surprised Arthur. He had expected Silas to condemn the business world as a whole. Don't you think all businessmen are exploiters? No. I know stories of businessmen who did a lot of good for their communities, who created fair jobs, who invested in education and health, who innovated to solve social problems. And what would be the difference between those and the others? Motivation. Some do business to accumulate personal wealth. Others do business to create value for everyone. Employees, customers, community, environment. And do you think I'm the first type or the second? Silas hesitated before answering. Honestly, I think you started out as the second type, but you lost your way along the path. Claire told me that in the beginning your company had more human values. It was true. In the early years of Heiress Life Sciences, Arthur really did care about the well-being of his employees and the quality of the medicines. As the company grew, those concerns were gradually replaced by profit pressures. And do you think it's possible to go back? Of course, it's never too late to recover lost values. That conversation planted a seed in Arthur's mind. Maybe it was possible to transform his company without destroying everything he had built. In the late afternoon, Clara came back from her medical visits looking worried. Did something happen? Arthur asked. One of the families is going through hard times. The father lost his job in the neighboring town, and they don't have money to buy medicine for their diabetic daughter. And what are you going to do? We're going to organize a community fundraiser. Everyone contributes what they can. Will it work out? It always has so far. When someone has a problem, everyone helps. We've already held fundraisers for surgeries, for fixing up houses, for buying school supplies. And what if you don't manage to raise enough this time? We will. It might take a while, but we will. Arthur grew thoughtful. The diabetes medicine the child needed cost about $60. For him, it was pocket change. For that family and that community, it was a significant amount. Clara, what if I— No, she interrupted, knowing what he was going to propose. Dad, I know your intention is good, but this has to be resolved by the community. That's how we strengthen the bonds between people. But the child needs the medicine now. She has enough medicine for 5 more days. Tomorrow we'll organize the fundraiser. In 2 days, we'll have the money. And if you don't, we will. Trust people, Dad. You might be surprised. That night, Arthur had dinner alone at the inn, but his mind was racing. He was beginning to understand the world Clara had chosen to live in, but he still struggled against his instincts to solve everything with money. The next day, he went to watch the fundraiser being organized. Silas had made a list of all the families in the community, and Clara was visiting each one, explaining the situation. Miss Sally, Mr. Charles's daughter needs diabetes medicine. Can you all contribute anything? Of course, dear, I don't have money, but I can give you a dozen eggs to sell. Perfect. Thank you. At the next house. Mr. Toby, can you all help with the fundraiser? Money's a little tight this month, Claire, but I can work a day on someone's farm and pass the day's wages on to you all. And so on. Some people contributed money, others contributed goods, others contributed services that could be sold or traded. In 2 hours, they had raised almost half of what was needed. The rest would come from selling the donated goods at the market in the neighboring town. Is everyone going to contribute? Arthur asked, impressed. Everyone who can, Clara answered. There are 2 families going through hard times too, so we're not going to ask anything from them, but the other 23 families will pitch in. And nobody complains? Why would they complain? Last week, it was Martha's family that needed help, buying glasses for their grandson. Next month, it could be any of us. That's how we protect ourselves, by taking care of each other. Arthur observed how efficient the operation was. There was no bureaucracy, no middlemen, no administrative fees. It was direct, practical solidarity. How do you know the money will be used correctly? Because we know the family. We know the girl really has diabetes. We know the father really lost his job. We know they're honest people. And if they weren't? Then we'd sit down and talk with them, try to understand the problem, offer help in other ways, but that's never happened. Never? Never. When you live in a small community like this, everyone knows everyone. It's hard to lie or deceive. That afternoon, Arthur went with Silas and Clara to the neighboring town to sell the donated goods and buy the medicine. At the market, they managed to sell everything for even more than they expected. People know it's for charity and pay a little more, Silas explained. They bought the medicine at the pharmacy and went back to deliver it to the child's family. The parents' gratitude was moving. "Thank you, my dear," the mother said to Clara. "You saved our girl." "The community saved her," Clara corrected. "Everyone contributed. And how can we repay you? When another family needs help, you contribute too. That's how it works." On the way back, Arthur was thoughtful. "What are you thinking about, Dad?" Clara asked. "I'm thinking that you solved in 2 days a problem that in the corporate world would take weeks of meetings, approvals, and red tape. It's simpler when everyone wants to solve the problem, not when everyone wants to protect their own interests." "Are you talking about corporations?" "I'm talking about any organization where people think of themselves first. Here, everyone thinks of the common good first. And it works because you know each other? It works because we've built trust over time, and because everyone understands that one person's well-being is everyone's well-being." Arthur tried to imagine his company working with that level of trust and cooperation. It seemed impossible, but maybe that was because he had never tried to build that kind of relationship with his employees. That night he called his secretary. "Miss Sterling, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, Mr. Harrison. Do you like working at our company?" "Yes, I do, sir." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. What do you like most?" "Well, the pay is good, the benefits too, the stability." "And what do you like least?" Ms. Sterling hesitated. "Can I speak honestly?" "Please." "Sometimes I feel like I'm just a number. In 5 years working with you, we've never talked about anything beyond work. I don't know anything about your personal interests, and you don't know anything about mine. Does that bother you?" "A little. I spend more time talking to you than to my own family, but our relationship is completely impersonal." "And would you like it to be different?" "I would. I think I'd work better if I felt I was seen as a person, not just an employee." "Thank you for your honesty, Ms. Sterling." "Sir? May I ask why you're asking these questions?" "I'm rethinking some things. Maybe when I get back we can talk about this more." "All right, when will you be back?" "In a few days, and Ms. Sterling?" "Yes?" "How's your family?" "They're fine, thanks for asking. My son started college this year." "What's he studying?" "Engineering. He was always good with numbers, just like his father." "You must be proud." "I am, yes. Thank you for asking, Mr. Harrison." After hanging up, Arthur realized that it had been the first truly human conversation he'd had with Ms. Sterling in 5 years, and she had clearly appreciated the attention. The next day, Arthur went to observe Clara working at the makeshift community clinic she maintained in the community. It was just a small room with basic equipment, but she handled everything from simple cuts to more complex problems. "How did you acquire all this medical knowledge?" he asked. "By studying. Besides my nursing degree, I constantly take online courses. And I have a network of doctor friends who help me with the harder cases." "Doctor friends?" "From college, from the hospital where I interned. They give me consultations over the phone when I need them. And they don't charge." "No. They know about the work I do here. They see it as a social contribution." An elderly woman arrived with her grandson, a boy of about 10 who had a fever. "Claire, dear, can you take a look at the boy?" Clara examined the child carefully, took his temperature, looked at his throat. "It's a throat infection," she diagnosed. "I'll give him an antibiotic and an anti-inflammatory. He'll be fine in 3 days. How much do I owe you?" "Nothing, Granny Annie. The medicine comes from the community pharmacy." The woman left grateful, with her grandson already more cheerful. "Community pharmacy?" Arthur asked. "We keep a stock of basic medications. I get some through donations and I buy others with part of my salary. And you never charge anything. How can I charge people who barely have money for food? What matters is that they get the treatment they need. But that must cost you a lot." "It does, but it's worth it. And when I can, I ask some families to contribute with produce from their farms in return. That way, everyone wins." Arthur noticed that Clara's community pharmacy was a simple cabinet with medications organized by type. There were anti-inflammatories, antibiotics, blood pressure medicine, diabetes medicine, vitamins, everything labeled and accounted for. "Where did you learn about pharmacy management?" "The internet, books, talking with pharmacists. It's not that complicated when you have organization and responsibility." A man arrived, limping, leaning on a makeshift cane. "Claire, dear, I hurt my foot on the farm. Can you take a look?" Clara helped him sit down and examined the wound. "It's a deep cut, old man Peter. I'm going to clean and stitch it up, but you need to rest for a week." "A week? But how am I going to work?" "Old man Peter, if you don't rest now, it could get infected and then you'd have to stay away much longer." "But if I don't work, I don't get paid." "I'll talk to the neighbors. Someone can help with your farm while you recover." Clara did the stitching with professional skill. Arthur noticed she had knowledge that went beyond basic nursing. "Where did you learn to stitch wounds?" "At the hospital where I interned, and by practicing. At first it was hard, but now I have plenty of experience." "And what if you make a mistake? There's no medical supervision here. That's why I only do procedures I'm sure I know how to do. More complex cases, I refer to the city hospital." "And transportation?" "We have an arrangement with 2 drivers from the community. In an emergency, they take the patient to the hospital." "And payment?" "The community covers it, or sometimes the driver himself doesn't charge." Arthur was impressed by the informal yet efficient organization of the healthcare system Clara had created. "How many people do you see per month?" "Around 50 consultations. It's not a lot of people, but for a community our size, that's almost everyone." "And you've never had legal trouble?" "You don't have formal authorization to operate. Technically, I'm providing first aid and basic nursing care. I don't make medical diagnoses or prescribe controlled medications. But in practice, you're functioning as the community's doctor." "In practice, I'm doing what needs to be done. The closest community clinic is 9 miles away. For a simple appointment, people spend an entire day and money they don't have on transportation." "And do the local authorities know about your work?" "They know and they support it. The mayor of the neighboring town has come by a few times. He knows I'm solving a problem the public system can't solve." Arthur reflected on the bureaucracy that surrounded any corporate initiative and compared it with the freedom Clara had to act directly where there was need. "Don't you miss formal recognition? Diploma on the wall, official title. What for? People know they can trust my work because of the results they see. I don't need paper on the wall to prove competence." "But what about personal fulfillment? The feeling of professional achievement?" "Dad, do you think saving Granny Annie's grandson's vision isn't a professional achievement? Or helping old man Peter walk normally again? Or teaching a mother to take better care of her children?" "Yeah, but there's no glamour, right? No high salary, no public recognition, no career growth." "That's it. Dad, I feel fulfilled every time a person leaves here better than when they came in. Every time I solve a problem that was causing suffering. Every time I teach someone to take better care of their own health. That's professional fulfillment." Arthur tried to remember the last time he felt fulfilled at work. He couldn't. His business successes gave him momentary satisfaction, but they were soon replaced by new pressures and goals. "And when you can't help? When the case is too serious?" "I get sad, of course. But I know I did everything possible. and I learn from every situation to be more prepared next time. Don't you feel powerless? I do, but I also feel purpose. Even when I can't fix everything, I can do something, and something is better than nothing. In the afternoon, while Clara and Silas worked, Arthur was left alone reflecting on everything he had seen over the past few days. For the first time in years, he was questioning not just his specific decisions, but his entire life philosophy. His phone rang. It was Ms. Sterling again. "Mr. Harrison, I need to speak with you urgently." "What happened?" "The report on working conditions leaked to the press. We're having a public relations crisis." "What kind of crisis?" "Journalists are questioning the safety conditions in our factories, and some employees are talking to the press." "What are they saying?" "That the company prioritizes profits over worker safety, that there's inadequate protective equipment, that there's pressure not to report accidents." Arthur felt his stomach tighten. All of it was true. He had made decisions in recent years that prioritized savings over safety. And the Japanese shareholders? They're very concerned. They're threatening to pull their investment if there aren't immediate changes. What kind of changes? Independent audit of all units, investment in safety, improvement of working conditions. How much would that cost? The finance department is calculating, but it would be a significant investment, Arthur thought quickly. He could try to get around the situation with marketing and public relations, as he always did. Or he could use this as an opportunity to make the changes that, deep down, he knew were necessary for years. "Miss Sterling, schedule a meeting with all the directors for Monday. Tell them we're going to make structural changes in the company." "What kind of changes?" "Real changes. We're going to invest heavily in safety and improvement of working conditions." "Sir, this is going to significantly affect the profits." "I know. But it's time to do the right thing." "Are you all right, sir? This is very different from your usual profile." "So I'm great, Miss Sterling. Better than I've been in years." After hanging up, Arthur felt strangely relieved. For the first time, he had made a business decision based on values, not just profits. When Clara came back, he told her about the call. "And what did you decide?" she asked. "I decided to make the changes I know are right. Invest in safety, improve working conditions, even if it cuts into profits." Clara smiled. "How do you feel about that decision?" "Scared," he admitted, but also relieved. "For years I knew some things were wrong at the company, but I always found excuses not to change." "And what made you change now?" "Watching all of you here. Seeing how it's possible to make decisions based on what's right, not what's most profitable. And if the Japanese shareholders pull out, then I'll look for other shareholders whose values match the company's new direction. And if you can't find any, then I'll shrink the company, but I'll keep the values." Clara hugged him. "I'm proud of you, Dad." It was the first time in years she'd said that, and Arthur felt his eyes well up with tears. "I was lost, Clara. I had everything I thought I wanted, but I had nothing that really mattered. And now? Now I'm learning to tell the difference between what's important and what's urgent, between what makes money and what gives meaning." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us folks who are just starting out. Now back to the story. That night, Arthur had dinner again with Silas's family. The conversation flowed naturally about the day's events, weekend plans, small joys, and everyday worries. It was the kind of conversation Arthur had forgotten existed. No agenda, no goals, just the pleasure of company. "Mr. Harrison, may I ask you something?" Mabel said. "Of course." "Are you thinking about moving here?" The question caught Arthur by surprise. "What do you mean? You seem more relaxed every day, more present. I thought maybe you were considering a simpler life." Arthur thought about his answer. The idea had never crossed his mind, but now that Mabel had mentioned it, he realized he truly did feel more at peace here than he had in years. "I don't know, I've never thought about it." "You don't have to change completely," Hank suggested, "but you could split your time. Spend a few weeks here, a few weeks there." "Would that be possible?" "Of course," Silas said. "You can keep up with the business from a distance, and when you need to be there in person, You go to New York City. But what about your work? Wouldn't I be in the way? Dad, Clara said, you could help if you wanted. Your business skills could be useful in helping us organize our community projects better. How so? Well, we do everything kind of by intuition. Maybe you could help us be more efficient, reach more people, have more impact. The idea was intriguing, using his business skills for social causes instead of just generating profits. Do you have projects in mind? Lots, Silas replied. We want to expand the school, create an adult literacy program, improve the community's water system. And how does the funding work? So far, we've been winging it. We hold fundraisers, ask for donations, use our own money, but we know it could be more organized. You could create a formal organization, put together structured proposals, go after bigger funding. That's exactly it, Clara said excitedly. You could help us with the administrative side. Without interfering with the human side of the work, Silas added. You'd handle the structure, we'd handle the people. Arthur was excited by the possibility. It was a way to use his experience for something that truly mattered. And where would I live when I'm here? We could build a small house for you, Clara suggested. Simple but comfortable. Or you could stay at our house, Mabel offered. We've had an empty room ever since Silas moved out. You would do that? Of course, Hank replied. It would be an honor to have the father of our future daughter-in-law living with us. Arthur felt an emotion he hadn't experienced in years, the feeling of belonging to a family. I'll seriously consider this possibility, he said. In the following days, Arthur began to observe the community with a businessman's eyes, but now focused on identifying opportunities for improvement, not profit. He realized there was potential to create an agricultural cooperative that would allow local producers to sell directly to markets in New York City, eliminating middlemen and increasing family income. How do you currently sell your products? He asked Hank. To middlemen who come here and buy cheap, then sell expensive in the city. What if you sold directly? How? We don't have transportation, we don't know the buyers. I could help organize that. I have contacts with supermarket chains that value organic products from small producers. Would that be possible? Completely possible. And you'd get at least double the price you receive today. Arthur made some phone calls and discovered there was strong interest in the market for certified organic products. Within a week, he had established preliminary contacts that could transform the local economy. How did you manage that so fast? Clara asked. Relationships. 30 years in business, build a network of contacts. The difference is that before, I only used that network for my own benefit. And now? Now I'm learning that it can be used to benefit other people too. Arthur also saw potential to create a sustainable rural tourism program. The region was beautiful, had nearby waterfalls, and many tourists from the city were looking for authentic experiences. Imagine, he explained to the gathered community, families from the city coming here to spend weekends, learning about rural life, taking part in the harvest, eating home-cooked food. But we don't have the infrastructure, Martha observed. You don't need much. Some houses can be adapted to take in guests. You can offer walking tours, rural cooking classes, milking experiences. And how much would that bring in? Asked Old Man Peter. If done right, each family could earn a significant extra income, and it would be a source of work for the young people in the community. The idea excited everyone. For the first time in years, there was hope for economic growth, without anyone having to leave the community. How do we start? Silas asked. First, we make a detailed plan, then we seek funding for the necessary adaptations. Last, we create a marketing strategy. And you'd help us with all of that? It would be an honor. Arthur was discovering that using his skills to help other people was infinitely more rewarding than using them just to get rich. A week later, he received a call from Ms. Sterling with updates about the company. Mr. Harrison, the changes you approved are having a positive impact. Employees are more motivated, the press is covering it favorably, and we've received proposals from new investors interested in socially responsible companies. And the Japanese shareholders? They decided to keep their investment. They said this new direction aligns with their corporate philosophy. And the cost of the improvements? They were significant, just as we expected. But productivity has increased so much that we're offsetting part of the investment faster than we predicted. What do you mean productivity increased? Employees are more engaged, absences have gone down, turnover has dropped drastically, and they're suggesting process improvements. Why? They feel valued for the first time. They know the company cares about their well-being, not just profits. Arthur smiled. It was exactly what he had observed in the community. When people feel valued, they naturally give their best. Mrs. Sterling, schedule a meeting with all employees for when I get back. I want to speak personally with each department. That will take days, sir. There are over 200 employees. I know, and it's worth every minute. May I ask what's driving these changes? I'm learning that people matter more than profits, and that when you take care of people, profits come naturally. When Arthur told Clara about the developments at the company, she was visibly moved. Dad, you did it. You transformed your company without destroying it. It's still too early to celebrate. The changes might not hold up in the long run. They will hold up, because now they're grounded in solid values, not just temporary strategies. And are you proud of me? Very proud. You proved that change is possible, that it's never too late to choose a better path. That night, Arthur made an important decision. He called Ms. Sterling again. Ms. Sterling, I want to make more changes at the company. What kind of changes? I want to create a social foundation linked to the company. We'll invest part of the profits in community projects. What percentage of profits? 20%. 20%? Sir, that's a lot. It's necessary. I want the company to be remembered, not just for what it produces, but for what it contributes to society. And how would this foundation be managed? I'll split my time between the company and direct social work. I want to be personally involved in the projects. You're talking about a radical life change. Exactly, and I'm excited about it. The next day, Arthur announced his decisions to Clara and Silas. They were impressed by how quickly things were changing. Dad, are you sure you're not changing too fast? I'm 62 years old, Clara. If I don't change now, when will I? What if you regret it? What if I don't try and spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been? Silas stepped forward. Mr. Harrison, can I say you're an inspiring example? You've shown that it's never too late to choose a life with more purpose. You two are the inspiring ones. I just had the humility to learn from you. So now what? What are the next steps? Clara asked. First, I go back to New York City to implement the changes at the company and create the foundation. That should take a few weeks. Then I come back here to help with the community projects. And are you really going to build a house here? I am. Nothing too luxurious, but comfortable enough for me to spend long stretches of time here. Dad, there's something I'd like to ask you. What is it? I'd like you to walk me down the aisle at my wedding. Arthur felt his eyes fill with tears. It would be the greatest honor of my life. And I'd like you to give a speech at the reception. What would I say? Whatever you want. About love, about family, about new beginnings. About second chances, he finished. On the day he left for New York City, Arthur was emotionally transformed. The entire community gathered to say goodbye. Come back soon, you hear? Martha said, hugging him. I'm going to miss our conversations, Hank added. And we're going to miss having an honest businessman around here, Mabel laughed. The schoolchildren made farewell drawings. One girl drew him in a suit holding Clara's hand, with both of them smiling. Why did you draw us smiling? He asked. Because now you truly smile, she replied. When you first got here, you only smiled with your mouth. Now you smile with your eyes too. The child's observation touched Arthur deeply. It was true, he had regained the ability to feel genuine joy. During the trip back to New York City, Arthur reflected on everything he had learned. His daughter had tried to teach him through her choices that there were different ways to be successful in life. Finally, he had understood the lesson. In New York City, the changes at the company were received even better than expected. The employees were visibly more motivated and engaged, productivity had increased, and for the first time in years, turnover had dropped dramatically. During meetings with each department, Arthur made a point of personally getting to know every employee. He asked about their families, their dreams, their concerns. He discovered talents that were being wasted for lack of opportunity. "Why did you never tell me you had ideas for improving production?" he asked a factory worker. "Because no one ever asked," the man simply replied. "Well, I'm asking now, and I want you to know that your ideas are valued here." "Really? Really? I'm going to create a program where everyone can suggest improvements, and the best ideas will be implemented." The charitable foundation was created with enthusiastic support from the shareholders. The first project would be precisely the sustainable development of the community where Clara lived. 3 weeks later, Arthur was back in the rural community, but now as a resident, not just a visitor. The house he had built was simple but functional. 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a porch where he could work on his laptop when needed. "How does it feel to be our neighbor?" Silas asked, helping him get settled. "Like I'm finally home," Arthur answered honestly. In the following days, they began working on the sustainable development projects. The agricultural cooperative was taking shape, the rural tourism project was being fleshed out, and there were plans to expand the school. "Dad, you look 10 years younger," Clara observed. "I feel 10 years younger. I discovered that working with purpose is much less tiring than working only out of obligation." "And don't you miss life in New York City?" "I miss some conveniences, but I don't miss the rush, the stress, the loneliness." "Loneliness?" "I was surrounded by people in New York City, but I felt completely alone. Here, even when I'm physically by myself, I feel like I'm part of something bigger." Clara and Silas's wedding was set for the end of that week. Arthur was anxious and emotional as the event approached. The night before the wedding, father and daughter had a final conversation. "Clara, I want to ask your forgiveness." "Forgiveness for what, Dad?" "For being an absent father during your youth, for trying to impose my dreams on you, for not respecting your choices from the start. Dad, you don't have to." "Yes, I do, and I want you to know that I deeply admire the courage you had to choose your own life, even knowing it would disappoint me." "I never wanted to disappoint you." "I know. You wanted to live authentically, and that was more important than pleasing me. It was a lesson that took me years to learn. And now? Now I'm proud of the woman you've become. I'm proud of the work you do, the man you chose, the life you built. And Silas? Do you truly accept him?" "More than accept him. I admire him. He loves you the way you deserve to be loved. And most importantly, he makes you happy." Clara hugged her father, crying with emotion. "Thank you for changing, Dad, for allowing yourself to learn. Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to start over." On the wedding day, the whole community was involved in the preparations. Mabel took care of the church decorations, Hank had built extra benches to seat all the guests, and Martha was in charge of preparing the feast. Arthur helped with everything he could, discovering that taking part in the preparations was almost as rewarding as the celebration itself. "Mr. Arthur, would you like to help decorate the church?" the children asked. "Of course, what can I do?" "You can hang these flowers up there." Arthur found himself climbing a ladder to hang simple decorations made of wildflowers. It was something he never imagined he would do, but he was loving every minute of it. By the time of the ceremony, the small church was packed. People from neighboring communities had come to take part in the celebration. There was an atmosphere of genuine joy that Arthur had never experienced at high society events. When the moment came to walk Clara down the aisle, Arthur felt that he wasn't just giving his daughter away to the groom, but also symbolically handing her over to the life she had chosen. "You look beautiful, my dear," he whispered as they walked. "And you look beautiful too, Dad. Happy." "I am happy. For the first time in many years, I'm truly happy." When they reached the altar, Silas was waiting with a radiant smile. Arthur looked at the young man and no longer saw a threat to his plans, but the man who would make his daughter happy. "Take good care of her," Arthur said to Silas, squeezing his hand. "Always," Silas replied, "and let her take good care of you too." "Always," Silas repeated, smiling. The ceremony was simple but moving. The priest from the neighboring town spoke about love, commitment, and the importance of building a life based on solid values. Arthur felt that every word applied not only to the couple, but to his own transformation. During the reception, Arthur gave the speech he had prepared. When I arrived here a few weeks ago, I came to get my daughter to bring her back to what I considered the real life. What I discovered was that I was the one who wasn't living the real life. People laughed and applauded. Clara taught me that success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you contribute. That wealth isn't in what you have, but in what you share. That family isn't those who share the same last name, but those who care for one another. He looked at the couple at the center of attention. Silas, thank you for loving my daughter the way she deserves, and thank you for showing me that it's possible to be an honorable man in a world that sometimes seems to reward only ambition. Clara, thank you for having the courage to follow your heart, when it would have been much easier to follow my plans. You saved me from an empty life, even without knowing you were doing it. His voice faltered. You two gave me the greatest gift I could ever receive, a second chance to be a father, and a first chance to be a grandfather someday. The celebration lasted until late in the night. There was live music played by the community members themselves, dancing, plenty of food, lots of laughter, and genuine joy. Arthur danced with Clara, talked to everyone there, and played with the children. How does it feel to be part of a real celebration? Mabel asked. It's completely different from the events I used to attend, he replied. Back there, people went to be seen. Here, people come to be together. And which do you prefer? There's no comparison. This is real life. That was just a performance. As the celebration was winding down, Arthur found himself alone for a few minutes on the porch of the house where the feast had been held. He looked at the full moon, at the people still chatting animatedly, at the happy couple receiving the last congratulations. For the first time in decades, he felt complete. Not because he had everything, but because everything he had made sense. Silas approached. Mr. Arthur, can I call you Dad now? It would be an honor, son. Thank you for giving us your blessing. And thank you for changing. I know it wasn't easy. It was the best decision I ever made. You saved me without even knowing it. What do you mean? I was drowning in a life that looked successful on the outside, but was empty on the inside. You showed me there was another way. And now what are your plans? Now I'm going to split my time between helping the company keep growing ethically and helping this community develop sustainably. And most of all, I'm going to cherish every moment with my family. Family? Yes, you, Clara, everyone here. You're my family now. Clara joined them on the porch. What are you two talking about? About family, Arthur replied. And about how sometimes you find family where you least expect it. And about how it's never too late to start over, Silas added. Dad, you have a surprise waiting for you, Clara said mysteriously. What surprise? She led him into the living room, where a few people were still talking. In the center of the table sat a small cake with candles. It's not my birthday, Arthur said, confused. It's your rebirth, Mrs. Martha explained. Everyone here considers that you were born again when you decided to change your life. Make a wish, the children shouted. Arthur looked around at all those people who had welcomed him as family, who had taught him about true values, who had helped him find purpose. He closed his eyes and blew out the candles. His wish was simple, that he could continue being worthy of the love and trust of those people. When he opened his eyes, everyone was applauding and smiling. Clara hugged him tightly. Welcome to your new life, Dad. In the months that followed, Arthur established a routine that worked perfectly. He spent 2 weeks each month in New York City, managing the company's business and the foundation, and 2 weeks in the rural community, working on local development projects. The company continued to grow and remain profitable, but now with a clear social purpose. The foundation implemented projects in several rural communities, always with the same philosophy: sustainable development with the participation of the communities themselves. The agricultural cooperative in Clara's community became a model that was replicated in other places. The rural tourism project was a success, bringing additional income to families without changing their way of life. The school was expanded and began offering vocational technical courses for young people and adult education. Silas became the pedagogical director, implementing innovative methods that soon caught the attention of educators from other regions. The community health system created by Clara was formalized with support from the foundation, while maintaining its humane and accessible character. She began training other nurses to replicate the model in similar communities. Arthur discovered that splitting his time between the corporate world and community work was not only possible, but made both more effective. The lessons in values-based leadership he learned in the community improved his business management. The business experience helped organize and amplify the impact of the social projects. A year after the wedding, Clara announced she was pregnant. Arthur received the news with a joy he didn't know he was still capable of feeling. "How do you feel knowing you're going to be a grandfather?" Clara asked. "Eager to be a grandfather who's present," he replied. "To be here for the first steps, the first words, the first day of school. And if our son wants to pursue a business career, then I'll teach him how to be an ethical businessman, how to use success to create value for everyone, not just for himself. And if he wants to be a teacher like his father, then I'll support him completely, and I'll learn from him about the importance of education. And if he wants to follow a completely different path, then I'll support that too. The only thing I hope is that he's a good person who cares about others, who lives with purpose." The baby was born 6 months later, a girl whom Clara and Silas named Margaret, in honor of her grandmother. Arthur was present at the birth, holding his daughter's hand, offering all the emotional support he could. When he held his granddaughter in his arms for the first time, Arthur felt that his transformation was complete. That child would grow up knowing a present, loving grandfather who prioritized family over work. "She's beautiful," he whispered, tears in his eyes. "She's going to have a wonderful grandfather," Clara said. "I promise I'll be there for everything, all the important milestones, all the special moments. And we promise she'll grow up knowing the story of how her grandfather changed his life to find happiness." 2 years later, Arthur was officially retired from the day-to-day operations of the company, keeping only the honorary presidency of the foundation. At 65, he lived a life he never imagined possible, simple but rich in relationships, modest in material luxuries, but abundant in purpose. His routine included taking care of his granddaughter while Clara worked, helping Silas at the school when needed, taking part in community decisions, keeping in touch with the foundation's projects, and above all, enjoying moments of contemplative rest he had never allowed himself before. "Dad, do you regret anything?" Clara asked one afternoon as they watched Margaret play in the yard. "I regret taking so long to understand what really matters. But I don't regret the journey because it brought me here. And if you could go back in time, I'd do things differently from the start. I'd be a more present father, a more attentive husband, a more conscious businessman. But then maybe you wouldn't have learned the lessons you learned. That's true. Maybe I needed to go through all of that to appreciate what I have now." Margaret, at 2 years old, ran up to them babbling mixed-up words. Arthur picked her up, feeling the pure and unconditional joy that only a child can bring. "Grandpa," she said clearly, one of the few words she already spoke perfectly. "Hi, my love," he answered, covering her with kisses. In that moment, watching his granddaughter, Arthur understood that he had found true wealth. It wasn't in his bank accounts, in the properties he owned, or in the business successes he had accumulated. True wealth was right there, in the smile of a child who knew him as a present grandfather, in the love of a daughter who respected him for the choices he had made, in the affection of a son-in-law who saw him as an example of personal transformation, in the friendship of a community that had welcomed him as family. "Claire, can I confess something to you?" "Of course, Dad." "I used to measure success by what I could accumulate. Now I know that true success is measured by what you can leave behind." "And what are you leaving behind?" Arthur looked around. The school he had helped expand, the young people who were getting opportunities for quality education, the families whose lives had improved through the cooperative, the sick who received dignified health care, the company that now operated with social responsibility. "I'm leaving the world a little better than I found it, and a family that knows it's loved." "And Margaret, what do you want to leave for her?" "I want to leave her the example that it's never too late to change, that being a good person is worth more than being a rich person, that happiness is not in what you have, but in what you do with what you have. The end. And you, dear listener, what did you think of this story? Did you get emotional along with Arthur through his transformation? Have you ever thought about how your own choices might be affecting the people you love most? Leave in the comments your honest opinion about Arthur's journey and whether you believe he made the right decisions. We would love to know your perspective on this story of fresh starts and second chances. Don't forget to leave your like if the story touched you in any way, and subscribe to the channel to keep up with other moving stories like this one. See you next time.